Om Purnamadah Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Shankaram Shankaracharyam Keshavam Badarayanam Sutra Bhashya Kridau Vande Bhagavantau Punah Punah Ishvara Neti Murti Bheda Vibhagine Vyomavad Vyapta Dehaya Dakshinamurtaye Namaha. Om Shanti Shanti. Om Vasudeva Vasudam Devam Kansa Chanuramardanam Devaki Paramanandam Krishnam Vande Jagat Gurum. Om. Okay, so we started this series of meditations upon the Upanishads uh, around right after I think Ganesha Chaturthi in August, and we've had about 15, 16 sessions, and we are coming to the end of uh, our meetings, and so we thought that it might be useful to present a kind of a bird's eye view of the path that we covered. It might be useful and might be helpful to those people who might want to use this as a launching pad for them to enter deeper into the Upanishad. So, with that in view, um, I just wrote out a few points which I will share with you on the screen. And I would like to remind you, I hope it will be familiar in terms of the way we approach the subject. So I'm going to share my screen with you. Aha. Um, uh, Vishwanath sir, you have to enable me to share my screen. I mean, I don't have to, but if you could, acha, good. Let us see if I can share my screen now. Yeah, I'm able to do that. So let me find. Okay. Okay, so for some reason, it's not that I'm unable to share my screen. I'm able to share my screen now. Let us see. Let me try. Can you see this? Acha.
Sarvopaniषदो गावो आगच्छति. That is there. Sarvopaniषदो गावः.
Sarvopaniषदो गावो श्लोकः आगच्छति न वा?
आम् 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 दृश्यते.
Okay. Okay. Okay, so I would just like to remind you of how we started. That in the beginning, I had made reference to this shloka from the Dhyana shloka of Bhagavad Gita. Sarvo Panishado Gavo Dogdha Gopala Nandanaha Partho Vatsa Sudhi Bhokta Dugdham Gitamritam Mahat. So in that we had noted that the Bhagavad, not only had we noted incidentally that the Upanishad Sara is there in the Bhagavad Gita, but we also noted that, if you want to be able to, from the Upanishadic cow, if you want to take out the Gita Amritam, which we want to do, then you have to approach it with great love so that the cow can yield the milk that you need, the Amrita, the Gita Amrita, the Atma Tattva Amrita that the Upanishad can yield. We have to first of all approach the Upanishad with great love and great simplicity, like we approach the mother. We talked about that a little bit. Then we spoke a little bit. We weren't going into this kind of technical stuff, but we did in the beginning. We looked at the word Upanishad, and we had seen that Upa might stand for Upasana, and Ni might stand for Nishtha, and the Shad Dhatu, we thought we had heard from the grammarian perspective that it can stand for three things: a loosening, and the loosening was of bandhana, the sansara bandhana, the bonds of life, and then gati, which is either a going or a getting of the atma ananda, and then avasadana, which is the destroying of the shoka moha that Krishna so graciously did for Arjuna. So this Visharana, Gati, and Avasadana, the Upanishad does if you approach it with Upasana and Nishtha. And the way it does it is by providing Atma Jnana, know yourself. That is the whole point of the Upanishad, how to know yourself. And the self is, in this case, a capital S. It is not some minor psychoanalysis. It is a deep understanding of who you really are. This is Atma Jnana that the Upanishad stands for. Then we talked a little bit about what are the Upanishad. So we said Mandukyameva.
Tatra font lagu asti, there are multiple overlap of 3 screens, and yet PDF asti tat lagu asti. Prayana maximize kartum shakyate va iti sarve pruchanti.
Maximize kartum shakyate.
And the other screen.
Idanim?
इदानीमपि तथैव इदानीं मध्ये आगच्छति परं किञ्चित् तस्य प्रमाणं वर्धितुं शक्यते 66 86 किमपि वर्तते
इदानीं सम्यक् अस्ति वा?
सम्यक् अस्ति, अतीव सम्यक् अस्ति।
अन्यत् किञ्चित् नास्ति न वा?
इदानीं सम्यक् दृश्यते 125% माण्डूक्यमेवायं मुमुक्षूणां विमुक्तये। अन्यत् किमपि स्क्रीन् नास्ति, केवलं PDF मध्ये दृश्यते।
केवलं PDF मध्ये दृश्यते। ओके, सत्यं। Mandukam mumukshunam vimuktaye. We had discussed about the samvada between Rama and Hanuman, after he came back to Ayodhya. We discussed, and where Hanuman was asking. So the Mandukya Upanishad, of course, it is a very, very terse Upanishad. And then after that, it is really not after that, but more general, the 10 Upanishad, Isha Kena Kato Prashna Munda Mandukya Tittiri, etc. The 10 Upanishads are distinguished by the Shankara Bhashya on these 10 Upanishads. And then, of course, there is the 108 Upanishads that are in more details. We discussed a little bit about that. And then we spoke about the Upanishads as really having Guru Sishya Samvada as one of their most important features, because as opposed to being lectured to very often, it is better to eavesdrop on a conversation between two people who are very familiar with each other, and then you get a certain intimacy of conversation that you may not have the right to be in there, but you get to see it. And Upanishad has that feature. It is an intimate conversation often between Acharya and a Shishya, and we are getting to eavesdrop on that conversation through the Upanishad, which gives it great joy, because we are able to listen to something that is very atmiya and very private, and therefore very secret, and therefore we are being let in on the secret. Plus the Shishya is in the place of us, so always has doubts, and the Guru responds to those doubts. So many of our doubts might be clarified as well. So both in the Kenopanishad as well as the Kathopanishad, which we saw in some detail, in both of them, there is a Guru Sishya Samvada, where the Sishya is asking questions. Of course, in one case, there is no mention of the name of the Guru and the Sishya in the Kenopanishad, but in the Kathopanishad, the Guru and the Sishya are both famous. Sishya is Nachiketas and the Guru is Yamaraja. And we saw about a fascinating, play of their Samvada, and how a mere few careless words from the father were elevated into a Agnya, into a Adesha, and propelled Nachiketas towards finding his Guru in Yamaraja. So we saw that, Kathopanishad. And in both of them, we saw the meaning of the word Dhiraha, Dhihi. that, you know, this buddhi, dhira not just being the Hindi word of brave, but dhihi being the buddhi and the intellectual power, ra being ramate, so reveling in the intellectual power, and taking that intellectual power and converting it, of course, into a certain courage that is required in order to enter into the Upanishadic experience, not just to see it as a intellectual process, not just to see it as a mere intellectual process. And I also at that point had pointed out the following line from the Kena Upanishad that explained that the Upanishadic insight, the knowledge of yourself that the Upanishad relates to, is not to be had sitting, you know, in a room quiet with the doors closed and diya lit in front of some god, and in the white light of meditation you suddenly see yourself. It is not such an experience. So for that, Kena Upanishad says in great clarity, pratibodha viditam matam. The thing that you're trying to get, the insight that you're trying to get and establish yourself in, is pratibodha viditam. It is known in every knowing and every interaction of your sense objects with the world. You are knowing the same thing. That is what we're looking for. The unifying truth behind everything is what we're looking for, not something that is isolated in some room, belonging to some religion, belonging to some caste, none of that stuff. This is pratibodha viditam matam. So this was pointed out. Then we spent a little bit talking about tapas, because tapas is a very important thing. We had pointed out that tapas was what is at the base of creation. Creation, of course, for him, tapas is different. It is not standing on one leg and growing a long dadi and wait asking for something. Tasya jnanamayam tapaha. That jnanamayam tapaha created the world. And in Bhrigu in the Taittiriya Upanishad, we had spoken a lot about Bhrigu asking for the truth, and him being told repeatedly as he asks for the truth, tapasa brahma vijijnasasva. No, if you want to inquire into the truth, inquire through tapas. And of course, there are many levels of tapas, each level of tapas belonging to one of the pancha kosha. We had gone into the pancha kosha viveka. We had gone into the situation where there was an annamaya kosha, pranamaya kosha, vijnanamaya kosha, etc. And in each of them, Bhrigu had thought that in fact was Atma, and he came back and said, no, that can't be Atma. And the only instruction he got from the Guru was tapasa brahma vijijnasasva. Please go back and do tapas, but now do tapas at a deeper level. So each of the Panchakosha was at once the mistaken for the Atma and also mistaken for the Annam. And we had spoken that they both come from the Ad Dhatu, to eat. One is the eater, one is the eaten. And that they subsequently go deeper and deeper into the Panchakosha until Brahma Pucham Pratishtham. You get to Brahman. Then we spoke a little bit about Dharma. If you remember, I had given you the example of the many what you call circular concentric courtyards of a great South Indian temple, and how you have to slowly discard your car and then your shoes and then everything, and then finally you have to remove your very vastra in front of the god. So that approaching God like that, with the denuding yourself in front of God and accepting dharma as their fundamental principle. We spoke a little bit about the Kathopanishad mantra, Shreyascha Preyascha Manushyametaha. That means there are always two choices. One is the Shreya that takes you to the higher truth, and the Preya, the one that is convenient and more pleasant at the moment. And it might not be always convenient to accept dharma, but you accept the dharma. And because dharmo rakshati rakshitaha, You have to protect that dharma so that it can protect you. And remember, this was a dharma, as not some religion. Okay, dharma as a fundamental principle. Dharayati iti dharma. It is the one that actually holds creation in place. Just like gravity, it has an inevitability to it. So it's not a choice whether you want to accept it. Of course, you can try to keep going against it. But just like if you try to jump and go against gravity, you will fall. Same thing will happen with dharma. So the understanding of the dharma and following it was an important part of the Upanishadic journey. And then we had seen the how do you do this? What are the dharmas? So in that we have taken the Brihadaranyaka Vakya, Tametam Vedanuvachanena Brahmana Vividishanti Yagnena Danena Tapasa Anashakena. Vedanuvachanena Yagnena Danena Tapasa Anashakena. These were the 5 roots: the Vedanuvachana, the Yajna, the Dana, the Tapasa, and then the Anashaka, the giving up of any connections. We had gone through this step by step as a set of dharmas that are prescribed for the Brahmana. Brahmana is the one who wants to know Brahman, Vividishanti, who has Vividisha and is expressing his curiosity. How is he expressing it? How is he giving meaning to that curiosity and taking it forward? Yagnena, Danena, Tapasa, Anashakena. That we spoke about. Then we spoke a little bit about yoga. We tried to explain the difference between Vedantic meditation and Patanjala meditation. Patanjali says yoga chitta vritti nirodha, control on the thoughts of the mind. But again, always with Patanjali yoga, there is an asana, etc. These things are referred to in the 6th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita as well, and many places in the Upanishads as well. But must recognize that, just as I told you before, Pratibodha Viditam Matam, the Upanishadic meditation is done with open eyes during every interaction in the world. This has been mentioned 2 times, at least, many times, but 2 important times in the Gita. One in the 15th chapter, where Bhagavan says, Utkramantam sitam vapi bhunjanam va gunanmitam vimodhananu pashyanti jnana chakshushaha. So when you're seeing the world, you don't just see with the mangsa chakshu, you see with the jnana chakshu. And so Utkramantam sitam vapi bhunjanam va gunanmitam. Whatever you do, you're always able to see. Vimudha nanu pashyanti. If you're a Vimudha, you don't understand. Everything appears to be diverse experiences. But if you are a Vedantin, you see them as one. Pratibodha Viditam Matam. And then, of course, the highest form of meditation, that of Nididhyasana, that is the sannyasa, is that it's referred to in the 5th chapter. Naiva kinchit karomiti yukto manneti tattvavit pashyan shinvan frishan jigran. As you speak, as you talk, as you smell, you are always situated in the place where you say, these are not done by me, which is the know yourself in the Upanishad. And so if you are wondering what does that mean, that this is not done by me, that should be a good advertisement for you to study the Upanishad. Okay. And then we spoke for some length on the bow and arrow analogy, because this is a very important analogy that is brought about in the Mandukya Upanishad. Apramattena vedhavyam sharavat tanmayo bhavet. We had spoke about the bow and the arrow analogy, and how we regard ourselves relative to the world, and relative to the prarabdha, and relative to Brahman, and relative to the goal, etc. And then we spoke about some of the signs from the Shvetashvatara Upanishad. Lagutvam, one shloka I had quoted, that spoke about some of the signs of the beginning of yogic success as you move to the Parama Lakshya. So we had said that every Lakshya in the world has got a Triputi. A Triputi is a triumvirate, because a Lakshya is a sadhya. It is something to be achieved. And then there is a sadhaka and there is a sadhana, that is the instrumentation for achieving it. This is the Triputis. And every time, if you remember, then we had said something that is a sadhya for this stage becomes a sadhana for the next stage, etc. That's a complex. Nothing always stays to be a sadhana or a sadhya except the parama lakshya, which is the ultimate sadhya. That is the, so this one, Sharavat Tanmayo Bhavet is Brahma Tallakshya Muchyate. So that Brahma is the parama lakshya. We had spoken about that. Then we again went back to the Brihadaranyaka of the Yajnavalkya Samvada with Maitreyi, where he explains how do you approach this truth? Shrotavya, Mantavya, Nididhyasitavya. So Shravana, Manana, Nididhyasana we spoke a little about. And of course, Shravana, Manana, Nididhyasana are a path towards knowing your own Purnata. That is again back to knowing yourself. There is a statement early on that says the fundamental disease of human being is thinking that I am not already fulfilled. Apurnata manyate vyadhi. The fact that I think I am not fulfilled, that I am not complete as I am, makes me always reach for something else, hoping it will complete me. And that is a never-ending thing, because actually I was always complete. So this apurnata, we talk about Narayana and Nara meditating in Badrika Ashrama and trying to be tempted by Ramba and by some Apsaras, and Urvashi's birth from the thighs of the Narayana Rishi. And then we spoke about the analogies given in the Mundaka for Purnata. Yatha nadyaha syandamanaha samudrestam gacchanti namarupa vihaya tatha vidwan namarupad vimukta parat param purusham upayati divyam. We had said that just as the rivers go towards the ocean, and in the ocean, once you're in the river, it goes into the ocean, you can't tell which is Ganga, which is Yamuna. Similarly, the one who knows, the Vidwan, gives up the Nama Rupa and reaches, quote unquote, reaches, means establish himself in who he really is, which is the Parat Param Purusham. And of course, in the Gita also, this comes in a different way. Apuryamana machala pradishtam samudramabha pravishanti advat tadvat kamayam pravishanti sarve kama na kama apnoti na kama kami. Okay, so this again apuryamana machala pradishtam, that once you are established in your fullness, then all the desires flow into you. They are unable to disturb you, but neither do you have to reject them in any way, because there's the outward world sees things flowing into you, but you are established in your fullness. Nothing is flowing anywhere. You are the ocean. And then we spoke a little bit towards the end of the last class. I want to continue a little bit from where I had left off in the end of the last class. So I had ended the last class in explaining a little bit about the Guru Parampara, which is very important because, as I had mentioned, even Krishna in the Gita takes some time to say that nothing I'm telling you is new. So we described until Govindapada and Shankara, but this Guru Parampara is not something that happened a long time ago. It continues to this day. And, the modern example you can see, especially connected with modern Indian history, is that of Sri Ramakrishna and Swami Vivekananda. I hope many of you are familiar with that story. But in any case, Sri Ramakrishna was a mystic saint of Bengal, who fell in love with the Holy Mother, that is Dakshineshwara Kali. For those of you who have not gone, it's a beautiful temple on the banks of the river Ganga. Beautiful black Kali with Shivalingas in the front of it across, and the Ganga flowing, absolutely beautiful. He lived there and received Brahma Vidya from Sakshat Kali herself. Of course, even in his life, later on, when he was still pretty young, there was an old Baba who came, whose name was Totapuri. He came all the way to Dakshineshwar to teach Ramakrishna Vedanta, Advaita Vedanta. And Ramakrishna said, I don't know what you're going to teach me, but I'm going to ask. So he goes to the temple and he asks the mother, there's a man has come, Totapuri, to teach me Advaita Vedanta. Should I learn? And she says yes. So within 3 days, he is established in Advaita. Such is the glory of Sri Ramakrishna. And of course, Ramakrishna's most famous student is Swami Vivekananda, who also approached Ramakrishna at a very young age, completely skeptical, completely Western educated, and within the course of a few months, understanding that this is a different phenomenon than he's ever been taught in the kind of Western classes he has gone to in the universities of Calcutta. And here is a simple man who can barely read. Ramakrishna could barely read. In fact, somebody came to him once in his life and asked him, "Can you tell us what is in the Gita? We want to know what is in the Gita." And he said, "This is not very hard for me to tell you what is in the Gita. I'll tell you how to know what is in the Gita. You just repeat Gita, Gita many times fast. So if you do that, Gita, 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 Tyagi. Tyagi comes. He said, Tyagi. To be a Tyagi is the essence of what's all in the Gita. So Ramakrishna had a very simple way to say things and to distill the essence of the teaching. At once a great Bhakta and a great Vedantin, which of course are not different, which I've told you many times during these classes, but that Bhakti has to be a certain type of Bhakti, and that Vedantic inquiry has to be a certain kind of inquiry, and those are not prescribed by anybody, they are prescribed by the Upanishad themselves. So it was in fact Vivekananda who helped reinvigorate the message of the Upanishad in modern words, as an Indian, to give up any inferiority complex, to give up any negativity, and understand that the Upanishad teaches us not a dependence on a religion, not a dependence on a god, not a dependence on a book, but how to be self-reliant with a capital S, and to stand on your own feet. Or in the language of the times, Atmanirbhar. This came from Upanishad only. So how to do it and how to take it to transform your life. For that, you have to study the Upanishad. For that, you have to go through the discipline of the Upanishadic dharmas, not just some easy social rules. Ritam vadishyami, satyam vadishyami, mama brahma nirakuryam. These are the Shanti mantras in the Upanishads. You have to pray, you have to follow, and you have to discipline ourselves so that we can experience that in life. And actually, no one can force us to do that. Not our parents, not our teachers, not even Krishna. After 18 chapters Krishna has spoken. And at the end of it, he tells Arjuna, you would think at that point, Arjuna is fully accepting of Krishna as the teacher. He will do anything that Krishna says. And but Krishna doesn't tell him. He could have said, "So Arjuna, in summary, I have told you what to do. Now please go and do it." That could have been the summary, but it was not the summary. Krishna says, "Vimrishyetat aseshena yatechati tata kuru." Vimrsha, do vimarsha. Contemplate everything that I have taught you. Think through it, experiment with it, imbibe it, internalize it, establish yourself in it, and then yatha ichchasi tatha kuru. Then do as you like. Do as you like. If you do as you like when you are uncultured, you'll do something silly. Culture yourself and then do as you like. Because then your whole being, when it does it as it's liked, it will be driven in a way that your intuition will drive it. But your intuition has now been developed. The teacher is not going to tell you what to do. You do as you like. It is your choice. So similarly, in these classes as well, we just had a few ideas presented. It is like a tasting menu. The wealth and the treasure of the Upanishad is there for you to discover it, but it requires great discipline. It requires study. It requires time. It requires consistency. And it can't be done for a few months, for a few weeks, etc. Over years, you enter into the Upanishad. You enter into Upasana. And many times people have asked, where will you find a guru, etc. For anyone who is doing these things sincerely, the guru will helplessly materialize in front of you. So the Shastra assures us of that, and it has been the experience of all the people that nobody who really wants sincerely a guru has ever been deprived of one. So that Upanishad is waiting for you to discover it. And the role of technology and science and the way the world is moving, it is bringing the world smaller and smaller, bringing galaxies more closer and closer to us. We know what is happening in some galaxy, some black hole. And of course, as we are seeing even now, the whole human human endeavor is bringing every problem in every corner of the world right to our doorstep, etc. So there's no distance left. So this whole world approaching us so close, when somebody approaches you so close, you realize that you have to, this something is approaching you so close, you can't run away from it. You have to accept it and enter into it. So like that, this whole universe coming close to you in this way, you have to enter into it. You have to fall in love with it. Actually, this is called falling in love with the whole universe. Is called Sarvatma Bhava. That is to understand who you are. So better you do that until the universe kind of forces itself upon you and forces you to do something. So I'll end with a story that illustrates it. The story that my guru's guru used to tell. He always tells these stories that have got, they are simple stories, but they illustrate a point. So there was a man in the village. Apparently, he had taken a 100 rupee loan from somebody, and then he had taken a 100 rupee loan, and he had put it into the business. Things were okay, etc. But he hadn't made a lot of money. He didn't want to return this loan. That 100 rupees was still important to him. So that Sethji that he was taking that loan from, he kept on avoiding him. He didn't want to talk to him about that because he didn't want to confront the return of the loan. But then it was a small village, how long can you avoid? One day in the bazaar, the Sethji caught him by the scruff of the collar. He said, hey, you owe me that 100 rupees, and what interest and all, maybe there was no interest, is 100 rupees you please give me back. He said, oh, Sethji, I had such hopes when he had borrowed that money from you. Things didn't work out. My circumstances are bad. Please try to understand. He says, what do you mean I'll understand? What should I do? Should I let you go? He says, yes, please, can you let me go? This 100 rupees is better if you forgive the debt, He said, nothing doing. I cannot forgive the debt. When you borrowed the money, you were so confident. Now you returned the money to me. So I said, no, how can I return? I barely have enough money to exist, etc. He said, okay, I am disgusted with you. You are a person who has not kept your word. I am just going to let you go. But just for me to feel satisfied, I will let you go only if you eat 100 mirchis for the 100 rupees that you owed me. So the guy thought, this is not bad. I'll eat 100 mirchis. How bad can it be? So he said, okay, that will be a good way out of it. He said, okay, I'll eat 100 mirchis. So the Sethji got from the next dukan, he got 100 mirchis. 3, 4, he ate, 6, 7, 8. By the time he got to the 10th one, tongue on fire, throat on fire. This wasn't as easy as he thought. 11th, 12th one, he started coughing and begging the Sethji, see, Sethji, halat dekhiye, I'm in bad shape. Of course, now I've given it a try. Now, please let me go. He said, what let you go? Back to let you go again. Then give me my 100 rupees. No, Sethji, understand. I've got a throat can't tolerate all these mirchis and all. I can't eat the rest, please. I can't. I have a very delicate throat. A delicate throat? You have a delicate throat, but you're actually a thick-skinned fellow. You're embarrassing yourself and you're not giving 100 rupees back. You're thick-skinned, but you have a delicate throat. A thick-skinned, maybe you can take 100 whacks on your back. How about that? How about I give you 100 times hits on your back? That case, that's a good idea. After all, this chili is a big problem. That back hitting is better. He said, okay, that you do. You start. So I said, take off the shirt. Started caning him. 15, 20, 25. Blood started flowing. Pain was too much. The guy said, stop. He took the 100 rupees and gave it to Sethji and walked away. Now, in the end, he had to give that 100 rupees. Why did he have to have those chilies? And why did he have to get those lashes? Like that, we have got 100 years to make good a debt. That debt of human life, that is given to us in order to accept and enter into that oneness of Sarvatma Bhava. Whether you like it or not, there is no other way for lasting happiness than doing that. Sooner you accept the Upanishadic dharmas, the sooner you can feel that sweetness of life in the middle of all the other things that you're getting. Otherwise, you can keep on with these 5 of these, 10 of that, etc., until finally you say, Chodo mujhe, let me just do the thing that I was supposed to do in the first place. So, with that, I want to end. I'm not sure. We are going to have some comments by Vishwanath sir about how we are going to handle next class. I'm not sure what you got from these lectures. I got a lot out of it. It gave me a chance to deeply study one of my guru's books and perhaps have my own vimarsha to collect my thoughts and continue my journey with the Upanishads. And whatever you might have got, I hope I will hear in the next class. Now I'll pause for 2 things. One is we'll go to questions, but before that, Vishwanath sir, if you can tell what will be the format of the concluding session next Sunday, then there are some questions also, I'm sure, and I can answer afterwards.
Avashyam. Sarvebhyah ram namaskaraha. Agami kakshayam kakshayah swarupam evam bhavati. The swarupa or the structure of the class next week will be like this. Propose the swarupa. Again, with everybody's support and Bhagavan's plan, it will work. So first a few minutes, generally how we do all the last classes, something related to the subject. We will have one small 5 or 10 minutes of the class, any concept or any summary or some anecdote or something, which is that one thing which we want people to take away. So we keep something like that for the first 10 minutes. Then around half an hour for sharing thoughts, discussions and points, whatever people want to share, and what is their experiences as they went through this class, anything which they want to share and guide us. Also, from a Vyoma perspective, if you feel we what are the areas we can improve and do things better, along with your blessings, which feedbacks also which you keep giving, that is what makes us improve. So those things will be there for around half an hour. So 10 minutes of one point from the class, just to say that this is the last class and we continue, that is 10 minutes. 30 minutes of feedback we do. And then around 20 minutes of like many people keep asking and sending even in the mails, what are the things, how they want to participate through Vyoma, what are the things we can do in future, which are the other lessons or classes we can refer to. Some people have question on how should I continue my Sanskrit learning, some people on how to continue my Upanishad learning, some people on how to continue my Vedantic learning, some people on how should I introduce myself to Sanatana Dharma or these concepts. So those kind of concepts, we'll just give a brief about it and a small appeal, and then a small Dhanyavada Nirupanam to all the people who have made this whole class and this experience great. So these are some of the thoughts for the last class. Of course, open for suggestions, or open. It is very flexible, and anything else which Mahodaya wants to add and include into this.
One more thing, Vishwanath sir, that is that will we also next class announce the other plan we had about a future course?
Yes, if it is decided at our end, and we are we have confirmed ourselves that it will happen, we have a Swarupa, we have the confidence and the materials, whatever, we can just have a conversation, and along with Venkat sir, we can decide and announce it.
All right. Okay. Very good. Okay. So then can somebody help me moderate the questions that were there for this time? I have seen a few. Mr. Desai has kindly pointed out a few typos, which is he surely correct about. So thank you for that. Are there any other questions?
How many janmas does a person need to take us to enlightenment? That is one question. The second question, both are very, very frequently asked. Is it possible that from that Manushya, the Yoni, we come back to Tiryak? non-human, do we even go downwards in the next janama? Is that possible?
Ah,
Then what
okay.
happens? Both are very.
Both questions are specifically answered in Bhagavad Gita. Okay, one is answered, they say that, but they're only answered for the person who has entered into a serious engagement with sadhana and Vedantic sadhana. So at one time, first of all, Arjuna asked this question. He doesn't talk about insects and all, but he says, Krishna, you're telling me so many things. I'm going to try, but who knows, if I try, I might get halfway, quarter of the way, and then I stop. And then what might happen next time? I might get back to being a cockroach. So then what happens? How do I get rid of that anxiety? So Krishna says, don't worry, it's not like that. If you have engaged seriously into Vedantic sadhana, then the Lord assures us that in the next birth, we will take a birth, Shuchinam Srimatam Gehe. You will take a birth in such a household, not only a human birth, but a human birth in such a household where you will have the paraphernalia and the inclination to continue your Vedantic journey. So that assurance is given by Krishna very directly. How many janmas it takes for a person to get enlightenment? Krishna has given slightly more indirectly. So he says in a separate shloka, Bahunam janmanam ante jnanavan mam prapadyate. Now, Bahunam janmanam, after many things. But people say, see, in Sanskrit, there is one, two, many. So it's not 1, 2, 3. It is 1, 2, and many. There are three numbers. So if he says Bahunam, we take it as the least of the Bahunam, 3. So 3 janmas it will take to get enlightenment. So not this, not next, not next. Third one, you will get enlightenment. So both questions are answered by Krishna. I don't have to answer. You can look up in Gita.
Dhanyavadaha. Please share a few words about your Guruji if you are comfortable doing so. There have been in the past, you have shared a few things, but still people, many are asking. Share a few words about your Guruji.
Let me share a few words about Guru. But you see, you say that please share a few words about your Guruji. That will become some personal anecdote that is not and should not be so interesting. What is more interesting is what is Guru. So you see that that Guru, there is an expansion of the truth into the universe, that is creation, that is done by Bhagavan. Okay, Ishvara does the expansion of the truth into the universe. Okay, so he takes the truth and melts it, as it were, into the universe. It becomes the Mahasagara of the Sansara. That is the Bhagavan's job. That is called Nigraha. That is the expansion. Guru, Bhagavan sometimes changes his role from being the person who melts that Advaitic principle into the entire Dvaita. He changes his role into the one that melts the entire Dvaita into the Andvaita. So he collects the entire expansion and condenses it into the truth for you. That is called Anugraha. One is called Nigraha, other is called Anugraha. Guru is one who does that. Guru is the one who already sees the entire expanded universe that you are apparently seeing, that Bhagavan puts you into a Jiva Bhava and makes you see. Guru doesn't see that. I mean, it doesn't not that when he's seeing outside his window, you are seeing a tree, he's also seeing a tree. That's right. And so don't get confused with Guru as being some man with a big daddy and an orange robe. It's not like that. By the way, the Guru Parampara, the entire Guru Parampara, I told you all this Veda Vyasa, etc. Many of them were not sannyasis. They were householders. Okay. But anyway, don't think of Guru as some daddy endowed fellow. You think of Guru principle. Okay. Guru Tattva as the one that is seeing the world the way it really is. But you are not seeing the world the way it really is. You are seeing the world in a way that is confusing. Converting the truth into what is confusing as the variety of the universe is creation. Converting the created world into the condensed truth is Guru. So now that moment, that motion, putting the soul into the opposite motion, turning the soul oppositely. This opposite turning is very important, because even in the Kathopanishad, Yama tells, you see, this is the secret of creation. Paranchikani vetanit swayambhu. When Brahmaji was creating things, he made all the sense organs look outward. By creating a certain attraction between the sense organs and the sense objects, he made them all flow naturally outward. It's only Kaschid Dhiraha Avritta Chakshu, they turn their eyes inward. Now, turning their eyes inward shouldn't be seen as some kind of yogic contortion, but it should be seen as Guru. A Guru is a reorientation of your point of view. The Guru already has that point of view, and he wants to share that point of view with you. But he is not going to share by lecturing. He wants to share by recalling his point of view. And when he recalls it, you listen to it, and you are getting oriented toward that point of view. And then you may make that point of view yours. That is the Guru Drishti. The Guru Drishti is not some Kripa Kataksha that the guy is opening his eyes and looking at you with Karunamai Chakshu, and his eyes are falling on you and you are enlightened. It's not like that. Guru Drishti means not may the Guru look at me kindly, but may I see the world the way Guru sees the world. And when I say may I see the world the way Guru sees the world, I don't mean may I see the world the way my Guru sees the world, but the way Guru sees the world. Which means the expansion is moved outside into a recoagulation of the truth. So this is Guru. And you might want to put aside thought of my Guru or anything like that, but that Guru can come to you anywhere and everywhere if you are open to that Guru. It can come to you anywhere and everywhere, literally anywhere and everywhere that Guru can touch you. And when you start down the path of Upanishadic study or Vedantic Nishtha or even real bhakti, etc., you're opening yourself up to that Guru. And then that Guru Tattva will come to you in so many different ways. It might come in a tree, it might come in a rock, it might come in a neighbor, it might come in a man with a beard, it might come in so many ways. You have to be ready and alert to accept that. And there are stories from Uddhava Gita, somebody had 16 gurus, somebody had 25 gurus. So I wouldn't get too caught up in all that stuff. Of course, one thinks that one reads so many stories and things, one has to go in search of a guru, and then you'll search and you'll find one particular man with white dadi hiding in some cave who is your guru. And he might well exist. But that is not the point of it. The point of it is to understand the Guru Tattva and allow it to express itself to you, because it wants to express itself to you, because that is the meaning of human birth. That is the inevitable meaning of human birth. To reverse that, to Kaschid Dhiraha, having Amritatva Icchan, wanting to go from death to deathlessness. wanting that, once you want that, then you turn your eyes in avrita chakshu. You then turn the eyes inward. So the guru, who is a man with a dadi or some man you might know, is not identified. So my guru used to tell me, during mantra diksha, I am not there. Only Dakshinamurti is there. Only Dakshinamurti as the guru's guru is there. You are receiving from Dakshinamurti. So any failings of any human being you don't have to consider. Neither yourself nor the guru. You are just receiving from the Guru Tattva, and you are the Jiva Tattva. That is all. You are all the one. Ishvaro Gurudatmeti, it is said in Manasolasa. But you are all the one, but you are in the Jiva Bhava, and he, that is Guru Tattva, is in that Bhava. So you are receiving that mantra from. There is a shloka of Dakshinamurti that says, Tam Pratyancham Dakshinavatram Kalayami. Pratyancham. He is Pratyancham. He is inward turned. He is not outward turned. He is not interacting with you the other way people are interacting with you. He is always indicating to you, by being inward turned, he is indicating to you that you also must be inward turned. So, if I'm saying anything about my guru, then I am saying because my guru, whose sannyasa name was Ishwarananda Giriji Maharaj, he has spent a lot of time explaining that this personal idea of some personal person with their personal story is okay. That should not be our focus. There is a far greater, far more loving tattva that is ready to express itself to you at all times. This is the Guru Tattva, and it is far more valuable than some personal interaction between two human beings. So, if I'm giving you an introduction to my Guru, Swami Ishwarananda Giri, it is that this is who he was. One who said, do not pay attention to this particular Guru Murti, Guru body. Pay attention to Guru Tattva. To the extent it is expressing itself through me, receive it. That is what he would say. And he has taught us this really in a very disciplined and in a very, I would say, pretty strict way, so that we are not tied up to any particular person, any particular cult, any particular religion, nothing. It is the Guru Tattva in the highest way. And in the highest way means, it doesn't mean it's dry, because it is the highest truth, which is the Parama Premaspada, the one that is full of love. When you connect with it at that level, that is when you can feel the grandeur of the love of the Guru. So that is what I might say about my Guru. Anything else, Vishwanath sir?
So that is very helpful. And the Bhagavad Gita gives the essence of all Upanishads to follow. Detailed study of Upanishads is an exercise we can do. And the Ashaya can be taken two ways we can understand. Bhagavad Gita already gives us essence. So essence, we can study it and achieve. Study of Upanishads can be an additional exercise. Is it okay? Something like that is the bhava which is coming out of it.
Yeah, it's okay. Bhagavad Gita, first of all, you study Bhagavad Gita. Then you study Upanishad. Then you study Bhagavad Gita again. Then you study Upanishad again. And then you study Bhagavad Gita again. Each time it reveals a new thing.
And why has the Vedas been understood differently by Shankara, Madhva and Ramanujacharya?
Why are the Vedas understood? It's a very long answer. And it's not anyway, that is an area of expertise. The other, I have to tell you the difference between Advaita Vedanta, then Dvaita and Vishishtadvaita. It's a very technical matter, so I don't want to enter into it over here. And moreover, I'm not super qualified either.
Okay, that is fine. other gurus have also told about these, what we have spoken. Can we take them as gurus? Is just one
Of
the
course,
we
of
can take.
course,
That is
of
what
course.
we Guru Tattva we spoke about. These are the points. That is what we have for today, I think.
Okay, very good. All right, all right. So I
The
will
next
will
week,
meet next Sunday.
next week Swarupam, if I can just brief the next week Swarupam for the entire audience.
We
Venkat sir, Vishwanath sir already briefed once, so you might want to repeat it, but he already briefed when you are not there.
Okay, okay. Vishwanath,
the same thing. What the thing we were discussing, like the standard last class, 10 minutes of Vishaya Samarpanam of the whatever class we are doing, 30 minutes of discussion, feedback, Pratispandaha yat asmabhi svikriyate, Pratispandarupena, अन्यच्च किमपि प्रश्नाः सन्ति चेत् तान् अपि प्रष्टुं शक्नुवन्ति. अन्ते 10 निमेषाः व्योमतः कथं संस्कृताध्ययनं, कथं शास्त्राध्ययनं वा वेदान्ताध्ययनं वा धर्म विषयसम्बन्धी कक्ष्याः कुत्र कुत्र सन्ति, अनन्तरम् अस्माकं अपि विज्ञापन अपि भवति. एवम् अन्य 10 निमेषाः एवमेव किमपि धन्यवादनिरूपणम् इत्यादयः वयं कर्तुं शक्नुमः इति भावये.
अस्तु.
Fine,
perfect.
धन्यवादः. समाप्य.
हरि ओम्.